Imagine waking up to find your peaceful life turned upside down by a false accusation. This is the story of a woman who faced just that, and how she fought back to clear her name and uncover a hidden truth in her suburban neighborhood. It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday morning, the kind where the sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the familiar living room. The air was filled with the sweet scent of freshly brewed coffee and the hum of the neighborhood coming to life. This was a routine Emily had come to cherish in her quiet suburban home. She had lived in this cozy neighborhood for just over a year, and it had become her sanctuary. The house, with its well-tended garden, was her pride and joy. Every Saturday, she would spend the morning tending to her flowers, her hands digging into the soil as she planted new seeds or pruned old growth. This morning was no different. She had just finished her coffee and was heading out to the garden when she heard a commotion outside. The sound of raised voices and the slamming of car doors cut through the peaceful air. Emily's heart raced as she hurried to the front door, her mind racing with possibilities. As she opened the door, she saw a scene that would forever change her perception of her peaceful neighborhood. Across the street, a group of neighbors stood in a circle, their faces a mix of shock and anger. At the center of the circle was Martha, the president of the Homeowners Association. Martha was known for her strict enforcement of the community rules. But today, she seemed different. Her face was flushed, and her eyes were wild as she pointed at Emily's house. "She stole my garden," Martha shouted, her voice trembling with emotion. "My rare roses, my prize-winning lilies, it's all gone," the neighbors murmured in disbelief, their eyes turning to Emily. She stood frozen in the doorway, her mind struggling to process the accusation. Her garden was her sanctuary, a place of beauty and tranquility. The idea that she would steal from anyone, let alone Martha, was absurd. But as she looked around, she saw the doubt in the eyes of her neighbors, the suspicions, the whispers, the way they all seemed to be turning against her. Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for the battle ahead. She knew she had to fight back, not just for herself, but for the truth, for her garden, her home, and her dignity. She stepped out onto the porch, her voice steady and calm. "Martha, I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her eyes meeting the accusing gaze of her neighbor, "but I can assure you, I have not taken anything from you." And with that, she prepared to face the storm that was about to engulf her quiet suburban life. Emily's mind raced as she tried to make sense of Martha's accusation. She had always been proud of her garden, a labor of love that had taken years to cultivate. The thought of stealing someone else's plants was laughable to her. Yet, here she was, facing the wrath of her neighbors and the stern gaze of Martha, who seemed convinced of her guilt. As the tension in the neighborhood escalated, Emily decided she needed to gather evidence to prove her innocence. She spent the rest of the day meticulously documenting her garden, taking photographs of every plant, every flower, and every bush. She even dug up old receipts and catalogs, anything that could prove the origins of her garden's flora. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than meet the eye. Martha's accusations were too fierce, too personal. It was as if she had a vendetta against Emily. But why? The next day, Emily decided to visit Martha's house. She knocked on the door, her heart pounding in her chest. When Martha answered, her expression was cold and unyielding. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Martha, I need to understand," Emily said, her voice steady. "Why are you so sure I took your plants? I've been documenting my garden, and I can prove that everything I have is legitimately mine." Martha's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Emily thought she saw a flicker of guilt. But then Martha's expression hardened. "You're a liar," she spat. "I know what I saw. You think you can fool everyone, but you can't fool me." As Emily turned to leave, she noticed something in Martha's garden that made her pause. A small, hidden patch of soil looked freshly disturbed, as if something had been recently planted or dug up. Emily's curiosity piqued, and she made a mental note to investigate further. Later that evening, Emily returned to her own garden, her mind racing with questions. She couldn't shake the feeling that Martha was hiding something. As she tended to her plants, she noticed a small, delicate flower she had never seen before. It was beautiful, with petals that shimmered in the fading light. But as she examined it more closely, she realized it wasn't one of her plants. It was a rare, expensive variety of rose that she had never seen before in her garden. Emily's heart sank as she realized the implications. Someone had planted this in her garden, and she had a strong suspicion of who that someone was. But why would Martha do such a thing? And what was the real motive behind her accusations? Emily knew she had to find out the truth, no matter what it took. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the battle ahead. She would not let Martha's lies destroy her garden, her home, or her reputation. She would fight back, and she would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As the days turned into a week, the tension in the neighborhood reached a boiling point. Emily's garden, once a symbol of her hard work and dedication, had become the center of a storm she never saw coming. The word had spread quickly, and the whispers and stares from her neighbors were relentless. Emily could feel the weight of their judgment, but she refused to let it break her. She knew she had to stand her ground and fight for the truth. Some neighbors, like old Mrs. Harper from next door, stood by Emily. Mrs. Harper had known Emily since she moved in and had seen the hours she spent nurturing her garden. She had even helped Emily plant some of her favorite flowers. "I know you didn't do this, dear," Mrs. Harper said one afternoon as Emily tended to her roses. "Martha has always been a bit sensitive about her garden. But this is something else." Others, however, were not so supportive. Mr. Davis, who lived across the street, had always been a bit aloof, but now he seemed downright hostile. "I saw you out here late at night, Emily," he accused one evening as he walked his dog. "You were digging around in your garden like you were hiding something." Emily was taken aback. "That was just me tending to my plants, Mr. Davis," she replied calmly. "I often work in the garden late at night. It's peaceful." But Mr. Davis just shook his head, muttering under his breath as he walked away. The most shocking reaction came from Emily's closest friend in the neighborhood, Linda. Linda had always been supportive and kind, but when Emily tried to talk to her about the accusations, Linda's response was cold. "I don't know what to believe, Emily," Linda said, her voice distant. "Martha is a respected member of the community. And now this, it's just so confusing." Emily felt a pang in her heart. She had always trusted Linda, and the thought that her friend might believe the lies hurt deeply. But she knew she couldn't let the betrayals break her. She had to stay strong, for herself and for the truth. As the days went on, Emily decided to take matters into her own hands. She started a neighborhood watch group, focused on monitoring the gardens and ensuring that no one's plants were stolen. She also reached out to local garden clubs and nurseries, gathering evidence to support her claim that all her plants were legitimately hers. She even called in a botanist to examine her garden, hoping to find any clues that might prove her innocence. Meanwhile, the neighborhood buzzed with gossip. Some supported Emily, while others seemed to take Martha's side. The divide was clear, and it was tearing the community apart. But Emily refused to let the negativity consume her. She knew that the truth would prevail, and she was determined to see it through. One evening, as Emily sat in her garden, surrounded by the beauty she had created, she made a promise to herself. She would not let Martha's lies define her. She would fight back, and she would uncover the truth, no matter how long it took. And as she looked out at the neighborhood, she saw the faces of her neighbors, both those who supported her and those who doubted her. She knew that this battle was not just about her garden, but about the heart of the community itself, and she was ready to fight for it. For weeks, Emily had been gathering evidence, documenting her garden, and reaching out to experts to prove her innocence. The neighborhood remained divided, but Emily's resolve never wavered. She knew that the truth would eventually come to light, and she was determined to see it through. One day, while examining her garden with the botanist she had hired, Emily noticed something peculiar. The rare rose that had appeared out of nowhere seemed to be thriving in an unusual spot. The botanist, a seasoned expert named Dr. Patricia Lewis, raised an eyebrow as she inspected the plant. "This is an interesting specimen," she said, her voice filled with curiosity. "It's not native to this area, and it requires very specific conditions to grow. Someone must have planted it deliberately." Emily's heart raced. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed by an expert was a game changer. Dr. Lewis continued her examination, taking soil samples and noting the plant's unique characteristics. As she worked, she discovered something even more surprising. The soil around the rose contained traces of a rare fertilizer, one that was not commonly available in local nurseries. This fertilizer was known for its ability to make plants grow rapidly, almost overnight. Emily's mind raced with the implications. Someone had not only planted this rose in her garden but had also used a specialized fertilizer to make it stand out. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. Emily decided to confront Martha one last time, armed with the evidence she had gathered. She knocked on Martha's door, her heart pounding in her chest. When Martha answered, her expression was guarded, but there was a hint of nervousness in her eyes. "Martha, I need to talk to you," Emily said, her voice steady. "I have evidence that proves I didn't steal your plants, but more importantly, I think I know who did." Martha's face paled, but she didn't say a word. Emily continued, "I had a botanist examine my garden, and she found traces of a rare fertilizer in the soil. The same fertilizer that was used to make your rare roses thrive. Someone planted that rose in my garden to frame me." Martha's eyes widened in shock, but she still didn't speak. Emily pressed on, "I think you know who did this, Martha, and I think it's time you told the truth." For a moment, the air between them was thick with tension. Then, Martha's shoulders slumped, and she let out a sigh. I didn't mean for it to go this far," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I was jealous. Your garden was always so beautiful, and mine never seemed to measure up. I thought if I could frame you, I could make myself look better." Emily was stunned. She had suspected Martha's involvement, but hearing the confession out loud was shocking. "But why the false accusations?" Emily asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Why go to such lengths?" "Because I was desperate," Martha said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I needed to feel important, needed to be seen as the best. I lost sight of what was right, Emily felt a mix of anger and pity. She had been through so much. But she also understood the depths of human desperation. It's not too late to make things right. Martha, Emily said softly, tell the truth to the neighborhood. Let them know what really happened. Martha nodded, her face a mask of shame. I will, she promised. I'll make this right. As Martha walked away, Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. The truth had been unveiled, and justice would prevail. The neighborhood would know the truth, and perhaps they would learn from this painful experience. Emily's garden, her home, and her dignity had been restored, and as she looked out at the beauty she had created, she knew that she had won a battle not just for herself, but for the heart of the community. The confession had sent shockwaves through the neighborhood, and the atmosphere was thick with a mix of relief, regret, and newly formed bonds. Martha's admission of guilt had been a turning point, a moment of truth that had forced everyone to confront their own actions and beliefs. Emily stood in her garden, the sun warming her face as she looked out at the carefully tended plants. The beauty that had once been a source of pride had now become a symbol of resilience and forgiveness. The neighborhood watch group that Emily had started continued to meet, but their focus had shifted. Instead of monitoring for theft, they now worked together to beautify the entire neighborhood. Gardens were shared, seats were exchanged, and friendships blossomed like the flowers around them. Mrs. Harper, who had always been a steadfast supporter, took the lead in organizing community garden days. Neighbors gathered to tend to each other's gardens, sharing tips and laughter. The one divided community was now united in a common goal to create a neighborhood that was as beautiful on the inside as it was on the outside. Linda, Emily's former friend, approached her one afternoon as she was watering her roses. Emily, I'm so sorry, Linda said, her voice filled with remorse. I should have stood by you from the start. I let doubt cloud my judgment, and I regret it deeply. Emily smiled warmly, taking Linda's hand. It's all right, Linda, she replied. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them and move forward. Linda's eyes welled up with tears, and she hugged Emily tightly. Thank you, Emily. Thank you for your forgiveness and for showing us all what it means to stand up for what's right. As the days turned into weeks, the neighborhood transformed. The gardens were more vibrant than ever, and the sense of community was stronger. Emily's garden, once the center of controversies, was now a beacon of unity and healing. One evening, as Emily sat on her porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood, she felt a sense of peace. The storm had passed, and in its wake, a new beginning had emerged. The neighborhood had learned the importance of trust, forgiveness, and the power of standing together. And Emily, who had once been a target of false accusations, was now a symbol of strength and resilience. As she looked out at the beautiful gardens and the faces of her neighbors, she knew that this was just the beginning. The community had been through a trial, but it had emerged stronger and more united than ever. And as she took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet scent of her garden, she knew that she had played a part in that transformation. She had fought for the truth, and in doing so, she had helped to heal not just herself, but an entire community. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, Emily knew that this was just the start of a new chapter. A chapter filled with hope, love, and the beauty of a community that had risen from the ashes of false accusations and mistrust. And as she closed her eyes, listening to the soft murmurs of her neighbors and the gentle rustle of the leaves, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be.